Okay. Well, we'll start now. Good morning and welcome to the 14th Annual North Fork Foodie Tour, which is our first virtual tour. My name is Robert Deek, and I'll be the host for the webinar, Challah Baking Workshop, presented by Ellen Love. Ellen is a practicing psychotherapist who has been making challah most of her adult life. She finds baking challah very therapeutic and relaxing. It smells good, feels good, and most of all, it tastes good. The recipe she uses is from the mother of one of her daughter's high school friends. After trying it, Ellen has used it ever since. Please submit your questions via the Q&A function located at the bottom of the screen. My wife and co-host Amy Gadol, who also made the website, will monitor the questions and ask them out loud during the kneading portion of the demonstration. I'll give a 5-minute warning before the end and a 2-minute warning so we can end on time. And now here's Ellen.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Amy. So hi, I'm Ellen Love. Today we're going to make challah. It is my favorite thing to do. Just ask my family and my friends, and they'll tell you. So the first thing we're going to do is proof the yeast. That's going to enable the dough to rise if the yeast is lively, and we're hoping that it is. So in order to proof the yeast, we're going to dissolve, which this has already been done 10 minutes ago, dissolve the yeast in warm water, feed it with a little bit of sugar, and let it sit covered for about 10 minutes. I'm going to take a peek and see if it's foamy yet. Yes, I'd say it needs just about another minute. And then we're going to start mixing the first 4 ingredients. All the ingredients are room temperature. That's important. If your milk isn't room temperature, you can give it a little couple of second blast in the microwave. That always works. I think this should be ready. Yeah. So it's foamy. Can you see that? And that means that the yeast is alive. We use this kind of yeast packages, and there's a date on it. And this date is 2022. So sometimes you can have some yeast languishing in your cupboard, and when you go to use it, it's a little outdated. Don't use it, it will be dead. Okay, we're gonna add the first 4 ingredients that I have laid out here. And they are salt, 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 eggs. Everything is as fresh as possible. And here it's easy to have local eggs. Local honey, actually. Half cup. And half a cup of milk. I'm not going to mix anything yet. It's very tempting to mix, but we're going to leave it until I put in the flour and the butter. Flour. The bread takes about between 4.5 and 5.5 cups of flour. And you don't need to be very precise in measuring because you're going to be adding the flour as needed, but within that amount. So we're going to always have it measured in the cup, not use it from the container. So here we go. 1. 2. 3. I'm going to fill out the 4th cup, but I'm not going to add it yet. Just going to get it ready. And we're going to add 1 stick of butter, which is room temperature. It's nice and soft. Now we can mix. So I'm going to suggest to you that we mix very gently. The idea is to be able to pick up the dough with your hands and put it on your board for kneading. If you mix it too much and too vigorously, it will get soupy and will be so hard to pick up. You're going to have to keep adding a lot more flour than you would want to get it to the consistency to handle it. So I'm going to just be mixing. Can you see this? I'm just going to be mixing. I'm going to start adding the 4th cup of flour, very little at a time. Every time I make a batch, the dough responds differently. Either very soupy, not soupy, very solid. I don't know what makes the difference, but you'll see when you make it. Just add your flour, your 4th cup of flour slowly as you need it to firm up. Keep in mind is to be able to pick it up with your hands, and you don't want it sticking to you too much. Okay, so this is beginning to get a little firmer. Make sure that the butter is mixed in. Add a little bit more. It often takes most of the 4th cup before you turn it out onto your kneading board. I think we're doing pretty well here. A little bit more. Okay, so now I'm going to flour the board with the same flour that I have measured out, so we know how much we're using. I'm going to flour my hands. And I'm going to add another cup of flour to add as we need. So this is the 5th cup. Dough is coming out. Oops. I'm going to lift it with my hands. So it's pretty sticky, but it will firm up once we start adding more flour. I'm going to try to get all of the dough out of the bowl. Don't want to waste it. A little more flour here. Okay. Last little bit. So now we have this sticky mass, and I'm going to start gathering it gently with the flour on the board. Keep flouring my hands. And as we need to add more flour to the board, or add more flour, I'm going to do it to the board, not to the dough, not on top of the dough. So it is coming together, and I'm going to just lift it, turn it, fold it, give it a little push. As it gets more solid, we can start doing a little bit more of the kneading, of the pushing motion. But so far, because it's still a little sticky, and I don't want it to stick to the board too much, we're just going to do it gently. So it's lifting, it's folding, and turning. Lifting, folding, turning. Everyone develops their own rhythm with this. So you'll see, once you start doing it, you get into this rhythm, whatever yours is. So here, it's starting to come together. And it's starting to lift up off the board a little bit more readily than before. Okay. I see. It's feeling very smooth. It's firming up. And it should take It should take about 10 minutes. While I'm doing this kneading, if anybody has questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Oh, hi, Ellen. We do have a few questions.
Okay.
The first one is the shape of a holiday challah round?
It is for Rosh Hashanah. And so we're going to make 3 round challahs today and one sort of a basket weave shape, which is not long and it's not round. Yes, so to answer your question, Rosh Hashanah requires a round challah. No.
Great. Okay, we have some more questions. Let's see. I really enjoy making challah, but was recently diagnosed with a wheat allergy. I do not need to be gluten-free, but I need to avoid wheat flour. Do you know where I can find a good recipe for challah without using wheat flour?
I do not. I know there's almond flour. There are many other flours. I don't really have that information, but I have a feeling that it can be gotten. So good luck with that.
Okay. Is there any specific type of flour that you prefer using?
I have always liked King Arthur flour. They make a all-purpose white flour, and they also make a white whole wheat flour, which is a lighter whole wheat. And often when I can find it, these last 6 months, it's been very hard to find bread flour. It's been hard to find white whole wheat flour. But when it's available, I like to put about 1 cup of the 5 of white whole wheat flour into the mix. And I think it gives it just a little more body. And you can barely taste the difference, but I like the idea of using whole wheat.
Great.
So King Arthur, that's my favorite.
Okay. Great. Okay, someone missed the first few minutes. Can you give the ingredients again?
Yes, I just added salt, eggs, milk, and honey to 2 packets of yeast that were dissolved in warm water with a teaspoon of sugar. That's what we've done so far. Do I have a time check on this, Amy or Bob?
You're doing fine.
You're good.
About how long would you say we've been kneading the dough?
Oh, about 5 minutes.
I'm sorry, how many?
5 minutes.
Okay. It's feeling really good. I'm going by feel, and I'm thinking it needs about 3 more minutes.
Okay. Well, you've got plenty of time. We have another question. Have you ever made this without dairy?
I have not. I know there are very good recipes without dairy, but I haven't made it because I like the butter and the milk and the eggs, and so that's what I've used.
Okay. We have another question. Is it too late to order New Year or Yom Kippur challah for dollars?
No, it is not too late. In fact, we're going to have some really good ones at the end of today. So whoever wants one, have them just text me or call me a little later.
Or you can, or for those of you who are listening, if you go into the North Fork Foodie Tour website, into the contact section, send us a note and we'll get back to you with some information on challahs for dollars. Okay, a few more questions that I have. I've had issues in the past with bread not rising. How can you prevent that?
I think the first thing to think about is your yeast. If the yeast is fresh, I think it should definitely be lively and should rise. I'm trying to think of why else it wouldn't.
I'm sure it's user error. That's probably why.
It's been too cold in when the dough has been rising, and so it hasn't had a chance to really rise fully. In which case, what you can do is you can put some hot water in a loaf pan and put it at the bottom of your oven. Leave the oven off And put your dough on a top rack or middle rack with the hot water down at the bottom, and close the oven door, and that should really help it rise quickly.
Great.
I think that this dough feels ready. I'm just going to add just a little more to my hands.
I don't think there's any more. Alrighty.
So what we do when we think it's ready, and that's really one of the big questions, how do you know it's ready? It's not sticking now. It's not tacky. It's smooth and satiny, and it's holding together. Well, I would say it's holding together nicely. So the next step is to take a greased bowl. This is greased. Lift up your dough, put it in the bowl, turn it once and over, and cover it with plastic. A nice tight seal. Okay, this is going to take about 2.5 hours to rise. But don't worry, you do not have to wait here 2.5 hours. We have some dough that's already risen. And we're going to start with this one. First, I'm just going to clear this off a little bit. And we're going to take this already risen dough. This has taken about 2.5 hours. And it needs, this is the most fun, this is the best part. It needs to be punched. So we need to punch it down, get some of the air out, and then knead it in the bowl 4 or 5 times. And it needs to rest for just a couple of minutes. Let's just give it a few minutes. Sometimes it needs about 10 minutes of rest, but this one was punched earlier because it rose up to the top. And so it doesn't need a full 10 minutes to rest. It should be ready to work just in a couple of minutes. So if there are any questions while it's resting, I'm glad to answer them. We're going to make two loaves out of this, 2 round loaves. We're going to do my favorite, which is the tic-tac-toe shape. I'll explain it as I do it. And a traditional spiral swirl with raisins. So some people love it with raisins, some people don't. I make many of them with and many of them without.
Okay, well, we have another question.
Yes.
Let's see. Can't hear you sound, but how long do you cook? I'm trying to make this out. We make it a day before? Send me your website. How long do you bake the bread?
Bread
Give us the question.
in about a 375 oven for 25 minutes. I would check it at 22 minutes or so. Often it goes to 25 minutes. And a way to tell if it's ready is to tap it with your knuckle. And if it sounds hollow, it's done. If it doesn't sound hollow, or if you want to get it a certain color, some people like them really pale. Some people like them much darker. I'm in the like them darker camp. Then it might take an extra minute or 2.
Okay. How about since you've been doing this for so long, Ellen, what are some of the tips or the tricks you've learned in order to make a really great challah?
Tips and tricks. Well, this might not sound important, but I always handle the dough very gently. I've seen some people kind of slap it around and throw it around. It might turn out fine, but in my view, this is something to handle carefully and gently, and that's always worked for me. I'm going to take this dough and cut it in half, and we're going to make 2 loaves. Sometimes I would cut it in thirds and make smaller loaves, but today we're going to make 2 full size. Okay, you know what? My knife disappeared. I'm going to cut it with this. Even better. Okay. So, as I promised, tic-tac-toe. We'll do 4 sections. I tried to make them even. Some people would put it on a scale and measure it. Those are the smart ones, but I do it by feel. And it usually turns out pretty well. It's very forgiving. So if it's too long, too short, we can always add another little piece of dough to it. We're gonna squeeze out 4 strands. Should be a little on the tapered side. It just will make it easier to tuck them in at the end. Tuck them into the larger loaf. Okay. Let's see. No, this one looks a little smaller. And I think I'm going to put a little, just a little flour, a little more flour on the board, and roll them out a bit. Even is good. If you can make them even, it's
even better.
Even better. Okay, here we go. So tic-tac-toe, of course, we know 2 vertical, 2 horizontal, over and under, and over and under. Okay, close in the middle. As you go, you can shape. You can squeeze the ends a little bit. You can elongate it a little bit. Okay, we're going to start with a piece that's under and put it over. Here's a piece that's under, goes over. Piece that's under, goes over. Another piece that's under, goes over. And you're going to do the same thing with these pieces here, under and over. This one's under, it's going to go over. This one is over, this one's under, go over. This one's under, and it's going over. Okay, so now we still have pieces here that can be shaped. Okay, here's one that's under, it can go over. Another one here. Another one here. Now, as we get to the end of this, we're just going to squeeze the ends, pinch them, and tuck them. Squeeze them, pinch them, tuck them. If you can get one to cross over with another, it'll just be another little nice bump in your challah. Like this one, like these 2. Suddenly I have 2 little ends here. One can go over. Pinch it and tuck it. Pinch it and tuck it. Okay. And I'm going to put it in this parchment covered baking sheet. Parchment paper works very well. You don't have to grease it for anything, and nothing sticks. This one, we're going to add some raisins. About a half a cup or so to taste. And just knead the dough in the bowl, incorporating the raisins into the dough. I'm going to add just a little bit more flour to the board. And what I'm doing here is going to make one long strand so that we can make our spiral. The dough feels so good. It feels very smooth. It smells good, a little yeasty, just the way it should. All right, this should be ready. So we're just going to take the end of it. Actually, you know what, I'm just going to roll it in a little bit of flour, just to make sure there's no stickiness here. And what happens sometimes if it is sticky, when you shape it, you don't get the definition of the strands in your bread. So it has to be a little on the drier side. Okay, here I'm gonna make a little loop like this and just twirl it around. I'm going to just taper down that end a little bit and tuck it under. Squeeze it, pinch it, squeeze it, tuck it. Okay. Onto the parchment. Get that off. This one rose a little bit more. So this has risen for a second time because it rose a lot on the first rising, and I punched it down and it has risen again. It must be warm in here. So I am going to just not punch it, but just knead it in the bowl. Get out some of the bubbles. Make it workable. Okay. And then a little flour on here. That's great. I think I didn't mention this with the other one, but when you have your loaf on the board, after you've taken it out of the bowl, after it's risen, you want to press it out. I do it in a circle, but it's like distributing the gluten throughout. And this looks like it needed like about another 2-minute rest. I'm gonna let it just rest for another minute. Do we have more questions?
Yes, we do. Let's see. Oh, right. The question let's see. Well, here's one about the strands. When I squeeze the strands, they often shrink back up. Why is that?
Because maybe it hasn't rested enough. When the dough rests, it's elastic, but it doesn't pull back in. I can't give you the scientific explanation of that, but I would say let your dough rest a little bit more.
Great. What about what and the recipe for raisins? Was that a half a cup or a cup of raisins?
That was about a half a cup.
Okay.
It's sort of your choice. I used regular sultana Turkish raisins for this one, but I also have golden raisins, which I like a lot. So for another loaf. Golden. Okay, let's see. I think this one is fine now. So this one, okay, this one is going to be, I'm going to start out with a long skinny braid. But it's not going to end up a long skinny braid because we went round. So. Make this piece a little bigger and let's add it to this. Okay, so we're going to make 3 skinny strands and make a braid, regular 3-strand braid. Just letting it rest for that, I don't know, part of a minute that we did makes it more workable. I could tell, as the question before about when the strands pull back, I had a feeling that it hadn't rested enough and the strands would have pulled back. But now it's fine. Okay, we've got one long one. We have a second long one. So these are pretty good size challahs. These are, you know, I would say medium to large. And often, as I said, I make 3 breads out of that one batch. A little smaller. Let's put a little bit more flour on here. When I do a braid, a 3-strand braid, I start in the middle. Some people will start at the ends. I find it easier to do it this way. Okay. I'm taking a little piece off. It feels a little longer than it needs to be. And if you take pieces off at the ends, you then have dough for a roll at the end. So here we go, just regular braid. And at the end, you can taper them a little bit. You can pinch, tuck. Turn it around. Okay. Start here. Taper the ends, pinch and tuck. And then we're going to take this and make a circle. This way. So when it bakes, you'll have lots of nice little lumps. Okay. Onto the parchment paper. Do I have time for another one? Oh, you know, okay, I use that whole.
8 minutes to go.
I was thinking I was using a half of it, and I was wondering why it was so big. So we have one big challah here. Okay. So now they're going to rest for about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on the heat and humidity in your house. I'm going to lightly cover them with a cloth, let them rest, and in 30, as I say, 30 or 40 minutes, we're going to put an egg wash on it. Going to use egg yolk, a little bit of water, cold water, and wash the tops. If some people use a whole egg, and then there's a fourth one. There's a fourth one. The egg wash. Some people use a whole egg, but if you use the yolk, it comes out shinier and a little darker. So that's the way I like it. So we have done our resting. We have done our egg wash. We have done our put it in the oven, 25 minutes. And drum roll.
Ta-da.
This is what you're going to get. Okay. So everybody can see.
5-minute warning.
Okay, well, I'm open for questions. We've done them all. We ended up doing one large instead of two smaller, so we have a little extra time.
Okay, we do have some more questions.
Okay.
Can you use slivered almonds instead of raisins?
I never have, but I would think any dried fruit would be really good. I made it once with chopped apricots or cranberries. I'm not sure I would like it with almonds, but you know, try it.
Okay. We've had a couple of requests for the recipe, and everyone can find that on the northforkfoodietour.com website. If you go into the first tab, menu tab, there's a page called Foodie webinars, and if you click on that and then go to that page, find the session on challah, you'll find the recipe right there. Let's see. Here's another question. Do you make small bread too? Do you put butter on top? How big can we make it? And can you put fruit inside? This is 4 questions.
What was the last one? Can you put what in it?
Can you put fruit inside?
Fruit inside. As I say, I've always put dried fruit. I think fruit is too wet. So I would say I've not ever done it, but I would think dried fruit is a better bet than fresh fruit.
Right. Have you? Do you make small bread too?
I do. I sometimes take the whole batch that we saw, that bowlful, and I made maybe 8 rolls out of it. Little twisted rolls, a knot. You can do like a long strand, about a 12-inch strand, and just turn it into a knot, and that bakes nicely. Or the little spiral. So I always like to have a bag full of challah rolls. And as I took a little piece off of that last challah that I was doing, sometimes I take a few more pieces off, and then I have enough for a couple of extra rolls, even if I hadn't planned it.
Great. So when you add seeds, when do you actually add them?
Oh, I hadn't even mentioned the seeds. Thank you, whoever asked that question. After the dough has the second rising, and you put on your egg wash, then I sprinkle the seeds. I use sesame seeds, black sesame seeds, poppy seeds, and fennel seeds. And that's sort of a little secret ingredient. Sometimes people will say, I'm tasting something that I can't identify. It's a little different, and hopefully they like it. But it's fennel, a fennel seed, a little sprinkle. So these are the everything challahs.
That was the last question we had. And we have about 2 minutes to go, and I can give you another minute.
I'll just, the one challah that I was going to do, that I put all into the one big round loaf that we have here. I was going to do a basket weave, and I could just describe it. It's fun. It comes out really nicely. It's 4 strands, just 4 regular strands, tapered at the end. You squeeze the 4 ends together at the top, and then the motion is from the left side the left strand goes over, under, and over. Go back to the left side. You take it and it goes over, under, over, and so forth until you get to the end. And you just pinch and tuck, and it's a very nice shape. It's called basket weave. I know people work with many more strands than 4, or as I did a 3 today. There are 6 stranded challahs. I'm not an expert at that, but they're fun to try. So I'm sure you could get on YouTube and look for a 6-stranded challah. But I've been really happy with my 4 strands, which I do most of the time. The good thing about making challah is that you can experiment. You can try things. And if you don't like the way the dough feels, you can punch it down and start again. Well, not from the beginning, but you can, once it has risen, you can then punch it down and reshape.
Well, thank you very much, Ellen.
It's been my pleasure. I love making challah. I hope all of you will try it and love it as well. And it's been really fun. Thank you.
The North Fork Reformed Synagogue thanks everybody for watching. We hope you enjoyed it and picked up a few pointers. Please consider a donation which can be made on the website. All of today's webinars are being recorded and will be on the website soon. So come back often and see new content throughout the year. And please go to Facebook, Instagram, and like us and share with all your friends. And signing off now. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ellen.
And thank you.
Bye-bye.